As a student at Baylor, you have the privilege to go to classes and learn from world-renowned lecturers and researchers who are at the top of their field. To help us explore the academic heart of what it's like at Baylor and to share with you why a Baylor education is so unique and important, we invited Dr. John Eckert, Professor of Educational Leadership, to speak with you. Dr. Eckert represents in many ways what you'll discover of faculty across campus. He's an active researcher with a long list of publications. He's an expert in his discipline, and he contributes broadly to his field as a speaker and consultant. What he really loves, however, is engaging with, teaching, mentoring, and learning alongside college students. He and his family regularly have students to his house, and he takes an active interest in the lives of his students. This session has been recorded as part of our welcome session during in-person orientation, and I believe you will be encouraged by his words and his academic welcome. Will you please help me welcome Dr. John Eckert?
Welcome to Baylor. Baylor is the most joyful campus in the United States. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about why joy is better than happiness. So to do that, I have to start with a little bit of a story, because for parents here, this day feels a little bit like that first day of dropping you off at kindergarten. So this was us dropping our son off at kindergarten. We had just moved to Washington, D.C. We're dropping him off for his first day. I'm not sure where everyone else was, but we dropped him off, and he walked in, and he seemed to do okay. But then the tough thing about kindergarten is a couple weeks later, you have to have parent-teacher conferences. And so the good news is, at college, there are no parent-teacher conferences, all right? So that's a win for parents and for kids. But we showed up for our first one, and like any great teacher, his teacher had the wall outside of her classroom just covered in beautiful kindergarten art. And so we're walking down the hall, we see this sign saying that these are kindergarten self-portraits of kindergartners in their favorite places. So you have these really cute, smiling little pictures, painted, drawn, colored, of kids surrounded by pets and animals and rainbows and family members and friends. And as we're walking down the line, we get to the end, and then we look down just a little bit out of the line of sight for adults, and down to the bottom right, there's this picture that was kind of disturbing, because the kindergartner had seemingly chosen to only use a black crayon, all right? And his eyes looked kind of demented, like there was something not right. And then it appeared that his favorite place, or her favorite place, was in a coffin, all right? So it was so bad, we took a picture of it. And so here's the picture that we saw there of a kindergartner in his favorite place. So we looked a little closer, and then we saw over to the side, there was this little creature that kind of looked like fetal Voldemort from Harry Potter 8. So this is what we saw there. And we're like, not sure what's going on there. And then we looked under the drawing, and we saw the name, Ben E. E as in Eckert. That was our child. We produced that kid who produced that drawing. That's my genetic material that created this. And we're about to go into a parent-teacher conference where, if I was the teacher, I'd have some questions about the psychological safety of that child who seems to only use black and appears to be in a coffin. Well, we took that picture home. We took that on our phones, and we're like, hey, Ben, what's going on with your favorite place being a coffin? And he's like, oh, no, Dad, that's my favorite spot. That's my bed, all right? So, and we're like, well, who's this over here? And it's like, oh, that's Sarah. That's my sister. Because at the time they were sharing a bedroom in this apartment. And so very kind to put his sister in the drawing. I'm not sure she's ever forgiven him for that depiction. All right, so this is the day that feels a little bit rough for parents, but I'm gonna talk to you about it as a parent and a professor. I have two Baylor students, one who just graduated in May, and then I have another who's a sophomore. But I'm also going to talk to you about what we do at Baylor. So a donor in 2018 gave a lot of money to endow the chair that I sit in to support Christians in school leadership wherever they're called around the world. So public school, private school, it doesn't matter. We work with school leaders in all 50 states and over 45 countries who conservatively serve over 4 million students. And so that's the blessing it is to be here. On top of that, in the last 2.5 years, all these BUs that are about to pop up are places that I've gotten to go to speak to, learn from, and with educators all over the world. And there's no other place in the world that I can do this because Baylor is a distinctly Christian Research One university. And so that makes the work we do here unique. And it's a blessing to be at a place where this past spring I could go to Foster Pavilion and be part of worship with kids all over campus, 5,000 Baylor students having this kind of worship. And at the end of that night, they asked for students that wanted to give their lives to vocational ministry to come up on stage, and there were so many kids that came up on stage that they couldn't all fit. All right, so that's the beauty of being in a place like Baylor. And if you are not a believer, it's also an amazing place to be because at Baylor, we know what truth is. We know what capital T truth is. So your perspective, your experience, your background, when you bring that into our classes, that makes for a much richer discussion because we can hold that up against truth, which is the whole purpose of an education. And so it makes for a much richer experience than this is my truth, that's your truth, that's their truth. There is truth. And we get to hold up those perspectives against every disciplinary lens at Baylor. Because you see, Augustine of Hippo, North African church father, said this hundreds of years ago, all truth is God's truth. And to illustrate that point, I have the Sydney Harbour Bridge here in Australia. If you ever get a chance to go, it is a beautiful bridge and it's amazing. Australians, because they're amazing, they let you climb to the top of that bridge. So if you see those flags at the top and there's a few people standing underneath that. They let you climb all the way up there. Now that's 442 feet off Sydney Harbor. The roadway is several hundred feet below, and they let you go up. So my family and I were there. I was there for work, so I took my family along, and there we are at the top of the Sydney Harbor Bridge with the Opera House in the background. Amazing picture. Now, the Australians know gravity is real. So it's not my truth, your truth, their truth. There's truth, gravity's real, so they make us harness into the bridge because it doesn't matter whether I believe in gravity or not. If I'm unharnessed from that bridge and I decide to jump off, I'm either going 442 feet down to the harbor or to the roadway underneath me. So that is what I mean by all truth being God's truth. Life is hard, and it's also joyful because joy is not the freedom from struggle. Joy is, in fact, the fuel that allows us to struggle well, right? And that means joy is very different than happiness, all right? Now, the good thing is, if we have joy, then we will struggle, and that's good because as a professor, we're going to invite you into productive struggle. We're going to ask you to do hard things. So I get to teach one undergrad class. Most of the time, I teach master's and doctoral students, but I get to teach one undergrad class in the fall. It's the leadership capstone class for the leadership minors. So we get majors from all over campus, and we dig into some of the hardest problems in the world in 2025. And that's what we do every fall. And it is joyful, even though it's hard, and we don't always agree. But that's the joy that we invite you into, because that's what learning is. Now, we do not want trauma, we do not want toxic positivity, but we do want you to experience adversity with others, because that's where real flourishing happens. Because you might be able to be well on your own, but you cannot flourish without other people. And ultimately, the depth of our struggle will determine the peak of our joy. So easy wins are great, but those hard-fought wins that took others and took all that we have, that's where real joy is. So if we don't give you the opportunity to struggle, we rob you of the opportunity to experience real joy. Now, happiness, as I see it, that I think so many in the United States want now is instant gratification. The problem with that is it's circumstantial, fleeting, self-focused, and it will wither in struggle. If you think I'm struggling, therefore I am not well and I am not happy, then you are going to have a hard time in life. Ultimately, if we focus too much on our own happiness, we will miss joy. Because joy is the overflow of enduring love and gratitude for others that will effervesce through struggle. You all know some of the most joyful people you know have had really hard lives. And that's a lesson that we need to learn as early as possible because that's where joy is found. Now, this is not a new idea. This goes all the way back to Aristotle. Eudaimonia was his term for this holistic sense of a commitment to a greater collective good. That, he said, was the purpose of education. Now, our friends at Harvard have found that as well, that flourishing is not an individual trait. It's situated in a context and is a property of multiple individuals in a community. Again, you cannot flourish alone. Right? So, the author of Hebrews also gave us this information in Hebrews 12:1. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders us and the sin that so easily entangles us and run with perseverance the race marked out for us. At Baylor, you're going to do a lot of running. All right? Now, this running that I'm about to show you is not what the author of Hebrews was talking about, but it did happen when my son was on his first study abroad trip ever. First time out of the country, he goes to Spain because Baylor has amazing study abroad trips. He happened to be over there, though, at the time that they do this really stupid thing. And they've done it for 500 years, 8 mornings in a row at 8 a.m. And so my wife thought it would be a good idea for us to go visit him and take our daughters with us. So we found ourselves at the beginning of July in 2022 on this 3rd floor balcony overlooking what is known as Dead Man's Curve in Pamplona, Spain. All right, now my son, you've already seen his artistic capabilities. He also has an underdeveloped prefrontal cortex. It's not a disability. It's common to all 19-year-old males. He's dead set that we're going to run on this the next day, that we're going to be down in the streets the next day. And I'm hoping that watching this will penetrate that underdeveloped prefrontal cortex. So this is my smartphone footage of what happens on this curve. So this is a test to see if you're smarter than my son. All right, so here it is. I'm grateful for your reactions because it's a horrifying experience. And so while I'm taking that video, this is the picture my wife took, all right? That was what was happening in the street, right? So as we're seeing this, I look over at my son and I was like, hey, Ben, what do you think? He's like, only reaction, that was awesome. That is not awesome in any way. I don't know. So then I'm stuck with this dilemma that night. Do I do the stupidest thing I've ever done and go with him, or do I do the stupidest thing that I've ever done, let him go on his own, right? So next morning, 7:56 a.m., 4 minutes before the gun's gonna go off, here we are in the street. And it's finally sunken in what we're about to do. So just listen to Ben, where he's finally realized we're 4 minutes away from the dumbest thing we've ever done. So here we go.
Ben, how are you feeling in the streets about 4 minutes away?
A little jittery. It's real now, we're definitely here, but let's see how this goes.
All right, I know we're talking about happiness and joy, but parents, you know that smile is not happiness or joy. This is my son's an idiot, and I'm an idiot for being in the street with him, all right? Because there are gonna be 12 bulls coming up behind us on those cobblestone streets in just a minute. And the goal is to run a 1/4 mile to get into the bull ring with them. That's the objective, all right? So run the fastest quarter mile of my life, jump over 3 drunk and hungover people in the street on the way into the bull ring to get to this. Now, there's 2 words that we use to describe this experience that you'll hear. I think they're fairly accurate for the next 4 years you'll have at Baylor. So just listen to our description of what we just went through in the bull ring. All right, here we are.
How do you feel, Ben? Exhilarated. That was insane.
Welcome to your next 4 years at Baylor. They're going to be exhilarating and insane, but not quite that insane. So if you know this, as a first-year student, you get to run the Baylor line. It's the only campus in the country where you get to run out onto the football field before every home game as a freshman. And then you get to do it one more time your last game senior year. So it just so happened that my son, Ben, who we survived the bull run, he got to run the line this fall with my daughter, who was a freshman. And so we strapped GoPros on them so that you could get an experience of what it's like to run the line. Now, here's the good news, all right? At Baylor, we don't run with bulls. We don't run with bears. You just run with other college students, which is also somewhat hazardous, but not nearly as crazy as that. So here we go. Ben and the Baylor line. You'll see he gets enthusiastic about a lot of things.
It's go time! Welcome to the show! Come on, let's go! Bend down!
That's the beauty of being at Baylor. But at Baylor, here's the thing, you matter. Watch this video for what happens when we compare ourselves to others. So watch these 2 monkeys. Here you go.
The one on the left is the monkey who gets cucumber. The one on the right is the one who gets grapes. The one who gets cucumber, note that the first piece of cucumber is perfectly fine. The first piece she eats. Then she sees the other one getting grape, and you will see what happens. So she gives a rock to us, that's the task. And we give her a piece of cucumber and she eats it. The other one needs to give a rock to us. And that's what she does. And she gets a grape. And she eats it. The other one sees that. She gives a rock to us now, gets again cucumber. She tests a rock now against the wall. She needs to give it to us. And she gets cucumber again.
As parents, we've seen our 3-year-olds act like that, for sure. Raise your hand if you've ever had a 3-year-old react like the monkey there about getting the cucumber, which was fine until all of a sudden the other monkey got the grape and the cucumber's no longer okay. So I still feel like that as an adult sometimes. So over this week, you're gonna meet a lot of people, and comparison can be something that really starts to creep in. And if you do that, you know that's gonna crush joy. All right, because we need to live in community, but comparison can crush that community. And so Daniel mentioned this, but every Sunday we have 30 to 40 Baylor students over for lunch every Sunday. And we do that because that is community for us. It's community for our kids. And we've been doing that for 16 years. So we've had college students in our house for years before our kids were in college, seeing kids that they could look up to and become. And so that has led to what is my calling as an educator, to live in community with students. And it's been a huge blessing to our family to be able to do that, because calling is not based on happiness. Calling is fueled by joy found in a life lived for and with others. And we only do that out of God's abundant love for us. That's where our hope is. So I've got to take you back to Ben. So I had us dropping him off at kindergarten. This last May, he walked across the stage at Farrell with a degree in graphic design. Amazing joy through struggle. Look how far he's come. Actually, that's not true. He's still a terrible artist, but he did walk across the stage with several other majors, and now someone in Houston has thought those skills are good enough that they will fully employ him, and I no longer am financially responsible for him. So starting June 2nd. And July 12th, he gets married to another Baylor Bear. So amazing. We get to add a daughter-in-law to our family. So he's kind of ticking off the milestones real quick. So it's been amazing to see that kid who I still see as that kindergartner become that as he's grown through struggle in his time here. And just to be clear, so that you don't go away thinking that his sister has some issues because all you've seen is fetal Voldemort, I have a picture of them right before they're about to run the Baylor line. So just to protect Sarah, that's how he envisioned her for you. This is Sarah. So she developed out of the fetal Voldemort stage well. So there they are ready to run. And so we only can run well because of Christ. And we know in Hebrews 12:2 says, for the joy set before him, Christ endured the cross. If he had to endure that for us, that means that suffering cannot be separated from joy. Struggle cannot be separated from joy. And so because of what he has done, his joy effervesces through struggle and is our light. And that is why Baylor should be the most joyful campus on earth. Welcome to Baylor.